Speaking Human.
Today on Speaking Human, we grunt with everyone's favorite Austrian bodybuilder, former governor and 80s action star as he flexes his comic chops in a new marketing campaign for realestate.com Australia. Get to the chopper!
Speaking Human.
Welcome to Speaking Human, the official podcast of Monsters Unlimited, a creative agency with a business brain. I'm Shad Conley, Communications Director at Monsters Unlimited, and one of the few people in the world who can correctly spell Schwarzenegger.
And I'm Patrick Jebber, Creative Director at Monsters Unlimited, and a big fan of the Arnold.
The Arnold, all right. This is your first time checking out the podcast. Our goal on Speaking Human is to simplify complex marketing topics. We toss aside all the buzzwords and mumbo-jumbo to focus on how marketing can bring brands and people together. On today's episode, we discover the ins and outs of Australian real estate with a little help from the world's most famous Austrian. So let's get into it.
Dylan, I've decided that it's time for me to move back to Austria.
Really?
I've been looking at realestate.com.au, and Austria has some great places.
Realestate.com.au is Australia, sir.
Dylan, you're pronouncing so funny. That's what I like about you.
All right, what you just heard there was an audio clip from the new commercial, Arnie Discovers Realestate.com.au. I love that they call him Arnie, such a personal level. And that's just one piece of a new marketing campaign from realestate.com.au, centered around the larger-than-life star of movies like The Terminator, Commando, Predator, Twins, and a whole lot of other one-word titles, and the California Governor's Office. So, Patrick, do you want to give us a little background on this new campaign?
Sure, I'd love to. So the campaign from realestate.com.au, which is Australia.
It's tough to say that, you know, when you say it out loud.
I want to say Austria because it's just easier to say that, right?
Well, most people think, AU. Your mind just goes to Austria. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, so it uses Arnold and a little comedy to promote the website brand and their tools to search for properties in Australia. So in the campaign, Arnold, who is from Austria, if you didn't know that, has conversations with another actor, Wade Briggs, who plays Dylan as a character in the campaign.
Hell of a name, Wade Briggs, by the way. That guy's got star potential.
So in the campaign, Dylan, the character, seems to work for him as an assistant. Dylan tries to explain the benefits of realestate.au, and Arnie just doesn't understand what he's talking about. And when he's saying Australia, he thinks he means Austria, blah, blah, blah. And in one of the commercials, Arnold dismisses it as the way Dylan is pronouncing the word Austria, because Dylan himself is Australian. He's got an Australian accent. Long story short, Arnold is portrayed as a lughead in these commercials. At one point, he confused a reflection of himself in a mirror as his stunt double, which is pretty funny. He also thinks a male coffee barista with long hair and a beard is a woman. Strange.
And a beard.
And a beard. I mean, clearly a man. So
not only is he slow, it's like he's from another planet, right? Like this is his first time on Earth.
Yeah, which I think is the funny part about the campaign, because he's obviously a very intelligent person. I mean, he was the governor of California for a while. I mean, it's just in this commercial, he comes across as just like this.
Yeah, his character.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, from a starting point before we get into too much of this, just to give an idea of where we're coming from on this, what's your experience with Arnold? How do you know Arnie or Schwartz?
Sadly, maybe it's not sadly, I've been an Arnold fan since I was a wee boy. That's how they say it in Austria. What kid that grew up in the 80s doesn't know or have fond memories of the action movies of that time period? And I feel like Arnold was in a ton of them, many that you named in the intro,
Yeah, I'm the same way. We grew up in the same kind of time period, kind of those, preteen type years in the 80s when Schwarzenegger was at his peak, and I can remember waiting for Predator to come on HBO and being like, oh man, I hope my parents don't catch me watching this. And, movies like Twins and Kindergarten Cop, seeing those things in the theater. It's not a tumor. So, it's just kind of one of those things from the time I grew up that you got a soft spot for Arnie, even if he had 10 years where he was making remarkable movies, I'll say, too, that some of them still hold up today.
Yeah, I can't even think of one person that I know who hasn't tried to do Arnold's accent at some point in their life, so.
Yeah, it's a fun voice to do. And the other thing, is we don't really have action stars like that anymore. There's kind of like The Rock and stuff, but Arnold was, during a time where we had these kind of larger-than-life action stars, for better or worse. We have a soft spot for that. It's kind of like a days gone by.
Yeah, that's true. I never really thought about that, but he was one of the first of that kind,
Mm-hmm. And maybe one of the last.
Aw.
So, we both have a soft spot for Arnold. What's your experience with realestate.com.au?
I've literally had no experience with this
Have
website.
you had experience with realestate.com?
A little due to some client relationships, actually, but literally zero experience with the .au, which, isn't out of the ordinary. We live in the United States. I'm not really looking for property in Australia, so...
Whoa.
I'm not.
Spoiler alert. Way to alienate our Australian audience.
I'd love to visit Australia one day, but I don't know if I'll be looking for property there.
Yeah, you never know.
One day. You never know.
So, yeah, same thing for me. No real reason, never been to Australia. Not looking for real estate, unfortunately. I'm sure it's a lovely place, but no real exposure to the brand and just kind of a basic... I knew realestate.com existed. I've never really used it or anything like that. So we're both kind of newbies on that end. We're Arnold veterans, but realestate.com newbies.
I think I should point out that I have tried to do an Australian accent, my wife of which will tell me that I do a horrible one.
Well, let's hear it. Give it a shot. We'll see what we think.
Want to go to Australia?
I don't know why you do a growling whisper, but it's not bad.
That's how I imagine them all talking. It's like Steve Irwin, like, crikey, he bit my arm off.
See, that's not bad. I always revert to, Crocodile Dundee. You call that a knife?
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that.
Who would have, Paul Hogan would have made sense with this campaign. Could have worked, but, everyone in Australia is trying to book him. So anyway, getting back into it. What did you think? What do you think of the new Arnold marketing campaign from realestate.com.au? What does it do well? What are the positives here?
Well, personally, I really like the very crazy, unbelievable tie-in with the campaign. It's just silly. It's silly. And while I can't believe anyone would actually confuse the two countries, I think they're just attempting to have fun with it. In the process, I think they've done a great job of scripting Arnold into this very goofy character who just doesn't get it. So that's what I think it does well. The social media that they've tied in has a big role in the campaign, and they've done a great job of creating personas for the characters in the campaign, such as Dylan. And he has his own Twitter account, and it follows his life as Arnold's assistant. And then he regularly posts these little quips about the Terminator, or he adds an "ator" to everything, the sleep-inator, and supposedly Arnold gets irritated by this very quickly. So they've done a good job of really poking fun and just having a good time with it. So I think that's what it does really well. How about you?
For me, and you kind of touched on this, the key thing is it tells a story. There's a whole narrative arc here that they put together, starting with the Dylan character and, I'm getting this job, working for a big celebrity, posting videos online to his mom and dad with Arnold's star on the Walk of Fame and stuff like that. And they start there, and then it goes to these videos. So they have this whole flowing narrative that's going through all these channels and different marketing efforts they're doing. And I think that's kind of brilliant. And I liked the fact that it's not just Arnold pitching the product. It's not Arnold saying, I want to get some real estate in Australia. It's, he's playing this character, and he said, whatever you call him, a lughead, a buffoon. It's what kind of makes it funny, and it's, this blurring line between marketing and entertainment is definitely present here, because they have this whole story that draws you in, and if you get interested in the, back and forth between Dylan and this Arnie character. So to me, that was the whole kind of brilliant thing of it. They're pulling you into this story and then also spotlighting this product within that narrative arc.
Yeah, I was thinking about his quote in his Twitter feed that said the first official day he asks, so any tips on where to buy men's size 16 boots in LA? Hashtag Bigfoot. I wouldn't have imagined he had a size 16 boot, but now I do.
Yeah, you get so many details. Let me ask you this. I think of a lot of the campaign hinges on the comedy. Do you find it funny?
Yeah, I think there are pieces of it that are funny. I don't think the whole thing is funny, but there are these little, like when he sees himself in that mirror and he thinks he's his stunt double. It's sort of like makes you chuckle, like, you know.
Well, you know what's interesting about that is you, as soon as you mentioned it and you were talking about it in the intro, I can't stop laughing thinking about it. Even though when I was watching it, I'm like, that's so dumb. It's so dumb. Anytime I think about it, I kind of think it's hysterical.
Yeah.
Same with that guy with the beard where he tells Dylan, he says, we should get her number. For one thing, like it's a woman. The other thing is, we should get her number? Like
Yeah.
both of them?
Yeah. And he calls her a young lady, which is, again, just, from the scripting, it's bizarre, I guess it's a little bit of how he would talk, maybe how you interpret how he would talk.
Yeah, it's kind of a bold move by Schwarzenegger to just kind of play this comical character to full tilt idiot,
Yeah. And there's some articles too that has talked about how, he's comfortable in doing that, poking fun at himself, or at least the characterization that people have of him.
Well, there's this image, you're kind of like the dumb bodybuilder image.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kind of stereotype that people have, and I think he's just you picture a big guy to not be as smart as little people. Another thing worth mentioning on this is they do, in some places, profile the product pretty well. With some of the videos, as we were discussing earlier, they do a lot of throw the Schwarzenegger out there and then give you these, here's all the things that this realestate.com.au can do for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know we didn't talk about this yet, but some of the things that I think in the campaign that could be improved probably are showing and describing some of those features in the tool sets a little bit better.
Yeah, within the videos, you don't really see the site at all, right? Or the app.
Right. And I think that might help the viewers understand what they're promoting a little bit better. They're taking a lot of things for granted in the videos, so possibly interspersing shots of the screen a little better, or what the features are, maybe exaggerating them a bit, for a commercial to show that.
Yeah, and I think that touches on, I think you said it best earlier, and I don't want to steal your thunder here. Before we started the show, you said the strength and weakness of this campaign is one and the same, and it's Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
Because, he's what makes it funny. He's what grabs your attention. But at the same time, those videos, they just focus on Arnold. The product messages, those things get lost. So you're kind of missing out on some of those profiling and actual branding things you'd like to be doing with a campaign of this caliber.
Yeah. And somebody from their team had said, I read that they really just wanted to bring some awareness to the product and the tool set, because they said that really it was about people exploring the tool sets and seeing what was available to them. And they really used the character and Arnold to just bring light to that. So maybe it wasn't their primary focus in the ads themselves, but
yeah, get the exposure, and they've definitely gotten that. You got to give them credit. Arnold is plastered everywhere. They got him on social media. They got him all over their website, and they have kind of a separate site, which is AU Lives Here, where they really focus on it. But immediately you go to their homepage and they've got Schwarzenegger looking right out at you. Check out this story and stuff like that. So they've done that well. Now let me pull the conversation sort of in this direction. The biggest weakness I see with this campaign, though, definitely comes in the messaging, or even the Australia lives here, but then they're playing. You go to the site and it says like Austria, and then they insert an L and an I. This whole Australia thing, what's going on there? Like, is that a thing?
I have no idea. That's why I say it's a silly concept, like one that I don't quite understand, because I don't know any relatively intelligent person, I don't think, would confuse the two. I mean, I don't know.
Well, other than the on the website where you have the .au, I mean, does that happen? Is that a thing? I don't know. I felt like I was totally missing something. Like, Is there some big war going on in Europe where people are like they're fighting over the .au on websites?
To me, it was, let's just create this absurd connection between the two and, just make it funny.
Or is it just because Schwarzenegger's from Austria? They made it like, see, I don't know. I didn't really get it, and I didn't think they even needed that. You know what I mean? They could just focus on this story they've created, could just stand alone. Like, Arnie wants to find a place in Australia. The whole Austria part of it, to me, was just baffling.
Yeah.
Isn't even that part of it a negative? You know what I mean? It's based on this premise that he thinks he's looking for places in Austria. Right?
Yeah.
So isn't that saying he's not even looking for places in Australia? Why not just make the campaign he's like looking for a place in Australia?
Yeah.
Why does he have to be looking for Austria and get confused?
Yeah. You could still make him goofy.
Yeah, absolutely. You could still make him like completely bizarre idiot, if you wanted to, but it's kind of all based on the idea he doesn't really want to go to Australia, or he has no interest in actually going to Australia.
Yeah. Because you want to create interest in Australia and you want it to seem desirable. But, for all intensive purposes, it does bring light to it and builds maybe positive brand equity in it. I don't know.
Oh, exactly. It's basically like a Schwarzenegger movie. Ridiculously enjoyable. You're smiling the whole time, and it's only kind of afterwards when you start to think about it, you're like, that doesn't totally make sense. It's funny, it's got a good story, and like you said, from the exposure aspect, I mean, they got a big catch with Arnie, and they really drew some attention to this site and this app that people, probably never heard of before, at least a lot of Americans anyways.
Americans. Maybe that's part of the problem. We might not be the target audience.
What makes you say that?
I mean, aren't we the target audience for everything?
It's all about us. No, it's a good point. It's probably not geared toward us. And, who knows? People are Australian and Austrian listeners right now are probably like, yes, we're always getting the two confused. I'm tired of this.
Yeah. And they think we're pompous, arrogant jerks for thinking that everything is about us.
It's not about you, America.
I don't know. Is that what Australians or Austrians sound like? I don't even know. It's like
that's an Austrian's impression of an American.
Oh, okay. I gotcha. Yeah.
So let's wrap this thing up. We've weighed the good and the bad. What's your kind of final takeaway that companies can grab from the Arnie, realestate.com.au marketing campaign?
I've got a few things. There are a lot of ways to build brand and product service awareness. We focused quite a bit lately on the celebrity filled marketing campaigns, but that doesn't necessarily mean that as a business you need a celebrity to pull off a great idea. So like in this example, I think it does a great job of taking the concept and applying it to social channels that make sense for them. And, creating this narrative that tells a story. The other thing is don't be afraid of creating characters and using them in your marketing. I feel like it's one of the things that's often overlooked. We do these face value advertising and marketing campaigns. And this one's a good example of that whole, you could do anything. It's like telling a fictitious story to market your products, services, whatever,
I'm exactly on the same lines. The key thing for me is, tell that story. There's a reason people, read books and keep going back to them or TV shows. It's because they want to get swept up in a narrative. They want to, meet these characters and get interested in them. You can use that. And more we're seeing brands kind of do that within their marketing because it can be both. It can be a piece of entertainment while, showing off your product or what you can do. But you can use that as a way to pull people in. Even take away the Arnold aspect from this, and they still have a story. I mean, they could have still used that and had that as a way to tell the story, with Dylan as you. My boss wants me to learn about Australian real estate. How can I do it? Here's this product. Yeah. It's an easy pull-in. So you create that story and you get people caught up in it, and hopefully they'll keep coming back. And then my kind of sub takeaway from that is if you have a chance to get somebody like an Arnold or some kind of a big star, use that. Use that for all it's worth. They do that here. You could have incorporated the messaging and stuff a little better, like we said, but you're going to draw attention to your brand that way. So if you can get them in, put them on display, use that exposure.
The other cool little thing I was going to like a technical detail of this marketing campaign. And I go back to those personal videos of his employment experience with Arnold. Specifically, there's one where he's in the airplane with Arnold. And I thought what was a really smart decision is they were able to use that secondary character Dylan, who costs a little less in terms of having him on the payroll, so to speak. And from a budget perspective, they were really creative in how they didn't need Arnold for those shots, which cuts costs because, no likeness equals not needing to pay his fees. But they were able to allude to him in the shots and make it believable for the story, so they show his hand or they show his jacket and his arm, but they don't actually show Arnold. So they didn't need him for those different videos, which I thought was a really smart, just a small technical detail that, you can elaborate on a story without necessarily inflating your budget.
Yeah, no, that's actually a good note. And, because his presence is so large within it, he looms over it even when he's not in there. So it was a smart way to stretch it out. And they've done that pretty well. They're kind of, releasing a few of these little videos at a time. So they're kind of like stringing people along to keep you coming back.
For sure.
So interesting campaign all around. Anything else to add on that, Patrick?
I think you and I both said this before, but any chance we get to have Arnold Schwarzenegger as a topic of our show for Oreos, I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm just choosing junk food at this point.
Any chance to force people to listen to our Schwarzenegger impressions, we'll take it.
I'm gonna do it. So that's it for today's show. You can find current and past episodes of the podcast at speakinghuman.com. Yes! You can also subscribe to Speaking Human Podcast in the iTunes store.
You can also email us with your thoughts on the Arnie campaign for realestate.com.au or any other questions or comments to feedback@thinkmonsters.com. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Speaking Human. Catch you then, humans.
Speaking Human.
Run! Go! Get to the chopper!